You're listening to the Dirt School Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Johnson, and if you like hunting, fishing, country stories, and learning lessons from those who live their lives in rural America, you're going to love this podcast. Brought to you by Hunt Real Outdoors. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Dirt School Podcast. Today we got Mr. Jared Mills with us. Jared, thank you so much for joining me, man.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for the invite, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I figure most everybody that's going to be listening to this probably already knows you, or at least well aware of you from the Midwest Whitetail days, and then of course all the things you got going on now, which I'm sure we'll get into. But if you don't mind, here's what I want to know. I want to know a little bit more about Jared Mills, the kid. Like, what was it like for you growing up and the way you grew up? Did that lead into you doing all the things that you're doing now? So just tell me a little bit about how you were when you were younger and then how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, man, it's a good question. I don't think I've answered too many like that. It's usually, where do you get your start in the hunting industry? But, kind of going back through growing up, um, I wouldn't say I was obsessed with the outdoors from a super early age. I honestly didn't start bow hunting till like high school years. I just didn't know a lot of people that did it. And, a lot of how I got into it was just kind of cutting my teeth on it, learning through a lot of failures in the woods, which, looking back, you asked a question if it's led to where I'm at now. I think that played a big part in terms of, I think the more challenging anything is, the more likely you are to, be more appreciative of that experience. And, I think if it was handed to me, I wouldn't be continuing to do it today. But because it was hard and you find ways to continue to learn and continue to grow, it's a even bigger passion of mine today. But, you know, growing up, I was obsessed with sports. I loved fishing from a very young age. Um, a lot of my outdoor time was spent fishing, whether it's, I was obsessed with bass fishing as a kid. I thought I was going to be a professional angler. That was my dream anyways. But obsessed with sports. I was a big baseball guy. I continued to play all the way through growing up, high school, college. Um, out as far as the hunting side and outdoors, I think I got my first taste of it and initially got hooked more through trapping than anything. My dad and grandpa were both big into trapping back in the day, and so a lot of my earlier memories was uh, running trap lines with them. And then, the small game hunting kind of came along with that, with chasing rabbits and squirrels around and stuff like that. Deer hunting, wasn't as big of a passion of theirs, and so it never really got passed on to me until a little bit later. Started doing some of the traditional shotgun hunting and stuff that you see in a lot of places. And then, like I mentioned before, I started getting into bow hunting, just kind of self-taught in high school. And where I grew up, obviously sports were big like they are everywhere, but I didn't know even like amongst my friend groups and age groups, I don't looking back, I can't think of anybody that bow hunted. And so there was when I started getting into it, it was kind of my activity that I did on my own. I was still very much involved, had a lot of friends, did a lot of things, usually tied to sports. But that bow hunting thing was something that probably a lot of people didn't know I even did. I
Right.
just kind of did it as a side hobby, just trying to learn it, and you know, became addicted to it, obviously. But it wasn't a thing that I talked to people about growing up. It was just kind of my kind of hidden hobby, if you want to call it that. But again, I think it all plays into where I feel or how I feel about it today, and I'm very grateful to have learned that way.
Yeah.
And I still think it's the best way to learn. Obviously, we live in a day and age where there's so many resources, podcasts, YouTube shows, magazine, whatever it may be. It can shorten that learning curve for someone to get into it right now. but I still think the best teacher is experience. You know, the best teacher are the animals that we actually hunt. You can take bits and pieces of information from different people, but it's not a substitute for time in the woods and learning your specific situation. I'm a big advocate of that because a lot of times what you learn through these other platforms aren't always applicable to you, and so you really have to keep that in mind and continue to learn. I'm not saying there's not more ways to do it, but I like that the way I did it is still in my mind the best way to do it now for someone, just getting into it.
For sure.
So yeah, kind of a long-winded answer there, but just, growing up, I think I was the average kid obsessed with sports, and it kind of transitioned into the outdoors as I went. And just the way I did it, I'm very grateful for that experience of learning through a lot of failures over a lot of years.
Yeah, yeah. Now you touched on something right there that I think is really coming back around, it seems like to me. And that's the idea of woodsmanship and just getting back to the purity of the hunt. It seems to me
Hmm.
like the more technologically advanced we get, and those things are super awesome. I mean, we're using that right now as we even talk, but it seems to me like the more that stuff advances, the more guys seem to go, I just want to get back to the purity of what the hunt was. And I don't want to, like, I want to learn how to hunt, not necessarily just watch all the latest stuff and then just barrel out there. But I want to be able to go back out in the woods. And if there's no technology, there's no cell cameras, there's nothing like that, that I can still be successful hunting because I know how to read sign, I know how to hunt
Hmm.
feed and all that kind of stuff. Do you think that's um, kind of, do you see that happening as well? It seems like it to me.
I think so. I hope so,
Yeah.
anyways. Yeah, I think it's the little things that matter the most that get overlooked. I think, when we talk about all the educational resources we have today, everyone wants to be an expert in something, and so they naturally hit those high level topics, those like, advanced level stuff, trying to give everyone that extra edge that no one's heard before, or, they want to be looked at as a high level expert. But to me, just having hunted with different people and I get to kind of watch, if maybe it's a cameraman going with me, or maybe it's someone that I'm hunting with and I'm actually out in the field pursuing game with, the biggest thing I see is basically disregard of the small details. Maybe it's not knowing when you can move, or not, when there's maybe a spot where you could walk where the grass is a lot lower, or the vegetation is a lot lower, and you're going to leave less ground scent or make less noise compared to taking this path to get closer to an animal. It's those little things, like you said, it's the woodsmanship, but it's the tiniest details that you're never going to hear someone on a podcast talk about. You're never going to watch a YouTube video that addresses those things. They're skipping past all that stuff. And so to me, those are the things that in my mind, if I watch a hunter actually take in consideration of those small things and do the little things right, then that's my definition of a good hunter, a good woodsman. It's not the fact that he can, you know, he has the proper setup to make a long range shot or whatever it is. Like it's to me, the definition of a good hunter is someone that pays attention to every little detail, especially during, a chase or a stalk or some type of pursuit.
Right. Well, let me tell you, and I want to talk about this with you a little bit later, but I just want to mention this right now. Some
Yeah.
of the guys that I notice do that the best and the most and talk about it the most are traditional archery hunters.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
those guys, man, I listen to a lot of podcasts and I've interviewed some guys, and man, they are adamant about that. I mean, just the little details and the little sign, because I mean, they got to get close, man. And of course, you know that because
Hmm.
you ventured into the traditional archery hunting, and I do as well. And so that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today. But yeah, and I find myself, to be honest with you, my son talks to me about this sometimes. He's like, Dad, for the sake of creating content, sometimes you'll study up on something and then you'll make a video on it. But in reality, you're not an expert at that, and so it kind of comes off as you're just regurgitating something somebody else taught you or whatever to that degree, and it's not really something that you know. So you need to remember to be yourself and learn on
Mhm.
your own and do all of that kind of stuff, and not try to just put content out there so somebody can learn when you really don't know that yourself. And I'm like, it's like a gut punch, it's like,
Man,
shut up,
that's
dude.
some that's some wisdom right there though
It
for a
really is.
young man.
Yeah, it really is. But it's true. We live in a world where we're wanting to create content and all that. But if you don't watch it, you'll get ahead of yourself and you'll try to be something that you're not yet.
Yep, and you absolutely can't be something that you're not. And
That's
and
right.
we oftentimes don't give the audience and the viewers enough credit for being able to see through that because they can.
Yeah.
That's it's just something I've seen over the years, and people aren't dumb. They know who's being genuine, they know
Yeah.
who's not, and you may think that because you're behind a camera and behind a screen that you can kind of trick people or fool people, but that's just not the case.
That's right. That's right. Well, you mentioned a little bit earlier about maybe most people want to talk about how you got into the hunting industry and all of that. And I do want to know about that because I haven't really heard that per se, but you can shorten it if you'd like. But I would love to know how you got in with Midwest Whitetail. I mean, I know you were interning, then you became an employee at Midwest Whitetail, and then, of course, you've transitioned out of Midwest Whitetail to do your own thing. I'd love to hear just briefly that particular story, how that happened.
For sure. So I was during my senior year of college, I was playing baseball and going to school down in St. Louis, getting closer to graduation. And I had I worked hard during college to create a lot of opportunities for myself and build a good resume through a bunch of really cool internship experiences. And I was going to school for sport business management, and my goal was potentially to work like in the front office of a major sports team somewhere. Is kind of what I was, in the realm of working towards. But I was also at the same time becoming more and more addicted to bow hunting. And Bill Winke had just started and launched the online show at that time. And so this was maybe a year removed from the launch of that in 1 or 2 years. And I just, as I'm looking at what my next step is once I graduate, I just thought, man, that could be an intriguing career or at least experience to learn whether or not it's something I wanted to do as a full-time job. And so I found his contact information and sent him an email and just said, do you have any type of opportunities, whether it's an internship or part-time or something? Just, I think this could be a passion of mine. And keep in mind, I'm going off of basically what everyone else tries to do to get in the hunting industry. It's just because they love hunting. That's
Right.
not that I had relevant filming or production experience at that point. And he got back with me and said, Jared, I don't really have anything in mind like what you're talking about, but why don't you make a drive up here? We'll sit down, maybe we can come up with something. And so drove up there, sat in his basement for a couple hours talking, and we kind of created this internship position um, to start as soon as I graduated college. And so right after I graduated, I made the move to Albia where he was located and was an intern. And technically I was an intern for probably 2 or 3 months and then we turned it into a full-time job after that. But I just remember, Bill hired me based on my resume, to an extent, but and not relevant experience, but experience, enough experience and proof of work ethic and stuff like that that he believed I could figure it out.
Yeah.
Again, it wasn't because I had filming and production experience. It was just Bill's belief, and looking through that and hearing me talk about my experiences and stuff like that. That this guy can at least figure it out. He doesn't have the experience now, and so I'm grateful for that opportunity because that's not always the case. A lot of people, they just want to see relevant work experience, and that probably prevents a lot of good hires, or missed opportunities for good hires. And so I'm
Sure.
grateful that Bill took the chance on that because that's kind of where it all started. And then from there, it was just a lot of hard work and figuring it out because you can't do the job without without figuring it out.
Right.
And I just remember a lot of long days and nights during the early period of my career where, you do your full-time work during the day, and then I remember I'd go back to my apartment and just watch tutorials all night long, editing and filming tutorials. And back then it was a website called Linda was kind of the best tutorial website back then, and I would just watch those all night to try to become proficient at video editing and learning just the technical side of it. Um, and so from there, I continued to work and produce for him, became better and better at the filming and the production, and some of the other, I started to learn some of the other business sides of things. Bill is or was and is still a very good businessman. So I got to learn kind of the behind the scenes stuff of that, of how how he was pretty forward thinking in a lot of things. He wanted to, not just stay up to date with how things are changing, but try to get ahead of the curve on certain things. So I kind of got to learn just how he thought through things on as a business perspective, which was cool to me because again my degree was similar to that as sport management, basically a business degree with a sports emphasis on it.
Right.
Um, but the reality was I was doing a lot of filming and editing, and a year and a half probably went by, and I got kind of an uneasy feeling that I was not wasting probably would not be a good word for it, but I was not utilizing what I worked really hard for during my college career, just to become a video editor. Like, I wanted something bigger than that.
Right.
And so after about a year and a half of producing full time for Bill, I decided to take a job, basically retail and marketing or operations and marketing at Muddy. So it was more of a business position in the hunting industry. But the kicker is I continued to produce for Bill on the side. So I'd work my full-time job, I'd get home to my apartment, and I'd edit Midwest Whitetail videos as basically a 1099 contractor for Bill. And then fast forward a couple of years, I decided to actually get out of the hunting industry completely as a full-time job.
Now, was there a
The
specific reason for that?
the reason at the time was, it was my first time experiencing mixing your passion with your career, and that gets tough. Especially you think of people don't think about this, but you work in the hunting industry. When do you think your busiest time of the year is? It's
Yeah.
during the hunting season.
Yeah.
Like it's not working in the hunting industry doesn't mean you get all the time in the world to hunt.
Right.
And so at that time, and it also leads to burnout quick. Like this thing you're so passionate about now becomes work. And when you look at it that way, it's very, very tough. And so I stepped away. I decided to take a job outside of the hunting industry just to try to keep my passion, my hobby as just that. Keep it fun, keep it on the side, don't make it your career. But again, the kicker to all that, I worked outside the industry for about 5 years, but I continued to produce for Bill during that entire stretch. So same thing, even though I was outside the industry, I'd work my full-time job, come home to my apartment, eventually my house, and produce videos for Bill as a 1099 contractor that whole entire period. And so that's kind of how I kept my foot in the door of the
Right.
industry. And then it's just kind of funny how things come full circle. Then at that time, it was, man, I'm tired of only having 2 weeks of vacation to hunt. Like a normal guy, I need more time in the woods. Like
Right.
it's just doesn't work out for me. So um, I got with Bill and found a way to come back full time, kind of still doing some of the production, but more managing the production, managing the business, which would have been in 2017, is when I came back. And so then I'm back in the industry and doing it full time, and eventually made the move in 2022 to completely go out on my own. Obviously, I've been doing the filming and production since 2010. So at that time, it was about 12 years of doing that. I felt like I understood the industry well enough and the content game and all that type of stuff to go off on my own. And this is a similar reason to what I talked about earlier, but from a career standpoint, the more control you have over, where you want to take it, where you want to grow it, the type of content you want to produce, how often you want to produce it, all those things, the people you want to work with, the brands you want to work, the more control you have over all of that, the more like the easier it is to keep it fun. And
Right.
that's a key for me now. It's a move that I wish honestly I would have made much sooner. Just for my own career growth and but more importantly my enjoyment of the work I do.
Sure.
So it's been such a good move for all aspects. And so now I'm going on what would be my fourth or fifth year now, of doing it on my own and working with the people I want to work with, and it's been a really good experience. So now I'm in a good position where I can keep it fun. I can make the decisions of where I want to invest my time and what projects I want to take on and things like that. And so that's where I'm at today. Just really trying to keep this fun, trying to keep everything as far as the content goes, just very within my own lane, like we talked about,
Sure.
just being who I am. I don't watch anything else. I don't watch any other hunting videos, anything, because I don't want any outside influence. I'm sure it's nothing against other videos. I'm sure there's some phenomenal stuff out there and stuff I could probably learn from. But I think we tend to get influenced even subconsciously. Um, you may not realize it, but you start saying things that other people say and doing things that other people do, and pretty soon you're falling into that trap of trying to be something you're not. And
Yep.
I've just made the decision if I don't watch anything else, there's no way for me to get influenced by other stuff. I can just produce what I produce and just do a
Yeah.
really good job of the stuff I know how to do and,
Yeah.
and just roll with it. So that's what I try to focus on.
Well, that man, that's 100% accurate. I mean, oh gosh, I experienced this stuff as well. I mean, as far as like the influence of other things, you watch all these other videos, and you're 100% correct, man. You'll start saying the same things everybody's saying because you're thinking, well, that's what everybody's watching. So, you know,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of danger in that. Of course, it is in life in general, doing that same thing. But I will say
Right.
this. I noticed whenever well, two things I'd like to get your thoughts on. Number one is, were you shocked and surprised when Bill just kind of left Midwest Whitetail, maybe sold it or whatever he did, and just kind of was he did it feel like he was burned out a little bit too, or something, just needed a break, or what? I mean, were you surprised by that?
I would say I wasn't surprised just because I was already in it and I got to see Bill on a daily basis,
Yeah,
and meet with him on a daily basis. So I kind of knew where his head was at for
yeah,
for most of the time. He worked extremely hard, and burnout is a natural thing when you're doing it this way. And it's a hard thing to maintain forever, especially as you get older. I'll honestly say I think I was more surprised to see him or hear that he wanted to get back into it as
right.
he is now
Yeah,
than I was to see him leave the first time.
yeah,
Just because it's a lot. It's easy to get burned out. It's a lot of hours. People only see the final production, and that always looks pretty glamorous from the standpoint of, gosh, that's what those guys get to do for a living. And don't get me wrong, it is great, but it's not without a ton of hard work. Like you don't think about some of the things that the average guy thinks about. From you don't clock out at 5 p.m. You don't know the difference between a Sunday and a Tuesday.
yeah,
The work never stops. Your mind never stops thinking about what needs to be done. What projects, and the other thing is, yes, you spend a lot of time in the field, but that's not in place of all the other normal work stuff, the emails, the phone calls, the meetings, all that type of stuff still happens. So, I very much every day have to find a balance between getting out, doing filming, doing land management work, whatever it may be. But every day I'm gone, is an entire day of stacked up messages and emails that I have to respond to. So,
Right.
the work never ends. It's a lot of long hours, and it's not as easy, I guess, as what people think about. And I don't want people to take that the wrong way. Like I'm, very, very grateful that I'm in a
Yeah.
position to kind of call the shots on my career and put the work in where I want to put the work in. Um, but
Well, you're not
it
you're
just
not
giving people behind the scenes look at,
yeah.
what it actually is.
Yeah, you're not complaining. You're just saying there's a blessing and a curse that comes along with it. I mean, what everybody watches is the simplest part of it, but there's so much more behind that. And
For
I do,
sure.
I have a YouTube channel and I film all my hunts and everything too, so I get it, but not to the scale of that you guys do, but I get it. It never stops. You're right on that. And I will say this, I did notice, and this is just me, a casual observer. Well, I wouldn't say casual. I watch a lot of hunting stuff, and I watched Midwest Whitetail, and I was a part of the Southeast region for a couple of years. But man, when you went out on your own and you started filming again, I noticed like the difference of how you filmed in the way it was different than Midwest Whitetail. Like you seem to make everything a little more natural, like without the music and you could hear the more walk in, you could hear the more everything was just a little bit more pure. Um, my question for you is is that because of the way you really wanted it to be, or is it because that's just easier when you're self filming or busy?
It's honestly both.
Yeah,
If I did watch content and watch hunts, that is the style that I would want to watch. I
yeah,
would want to be ingrained into the hunt without distractions.
hmm,
Um, and it just happens to that's also an easier style to produce from an
sure,
editor perspective. So it works out. But yeah, I mean, I think the proof for me has been just the comments that I get that that when people say I felt like I was in the tree with you that entire time, or you had me on the edge of my seat that entire time. Like that's the type of stuff I strive for as an editor because I know I did my job. I
right.
I, I know that I at least you can't replicate the actual experience, but I did the best I could to replicate through the lens of the camera and then in turn the editing. And so that style to me is it. When you
Yeah,
have poor audio or you have different music or sound effect distractions, um, it pulls you away from the video. It's like it reminds you you're not actually there. You're just watching it from your couch or your chair, or whatever.
right.
And I don't think that I wouldn't want to watch the videos that had that, I guess. And again, there's just so much personal preference involved, right?
Sure.
Like, some guys just love to just like, get hyped up and jacked up with the music and the cutting edits and stuff like that, which is great. Like I think there's absolutely a time and place for that, but my opinion is that just the outdoor experience doesn't need that to be captivating.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I mean, I watch both styles and I can watch both styles and you're right. A lot of it is personal preference.
Hmm.
And sometimes I'm watching a guy, I like this guy. So I'm going to watch this guy. I don't care how he edits. I'm just going to watch that guy because I
For
like that
sure.
guy. And,
Yeah.
but when you started doing that, I was, hey, look, I watched your videos, and then like the next video I did, I was like, I'm gonna take all my music out and see what that sounds like.
That's yeah,
The very
I
thing
get
we
it.
said don't need to do. I was like, it just sounds cool, man. Just hearing all the noise and
Yeah.
everything. And of course, man, in Louisiana, it's so much harder really, it's so much harder to produce a good quality hunting video to the degree that we don't see the deer. It's
Yeah,
just harder, man. It's so much
for sure.
woods, and you may have 10 deer 150 yards from you, but they're through the woods and you can't see them, as opposed to smaller
Yep.
wood lots and things like that in Iowa with a lot of fields. So it's just more difficult. But um, I will tell you this, man. There's two hunts that stick out in my mind, um, that yours that I will never forget. And one of
Yeah.
them is that I think it was a 10-point buck that you killed in the ghillie suit when you were sitting in a log pile in the snow. Dude, that was
Hmm.
such a good hunt.
That was a fun one. That was it. It's this deer right there.
Yeah, that was
Um,
such a good hunt.
yeah, that was a memorable one. Like I've been fortunate to have just a lot of just cool experience, and there's so much luck involved. Like you know, people don't realize that yes, you also have to be a good hunter, but there's so many things that have to go right on these big deer, these big mature deer, on these sensitive property, small parcels, whatever it is. So I've been fortunate to have a lot of cool experience, but that one's certainly towards the top of the list. I think the biggest thing I took away from that hunt, two things. One, sometimes you have to be aggressive and think outside the box, and that's ultimately what killed that deer was doing just that. And then two, like the thing that I always will remember from that hunt is just how surreal of an experience it was to be blended in like that. Like it was like you were perfectly in sync with the surroundings, um, and you were just like part of that natural environment that night. Like I've never experienced that to that degree that I did on that hunt. Even like we were in the brush pile and we have pheasants flying in and out of our laps, basically. Like none of the wildlife knew we existed.
Wow.
And that was what was insane to me. It just was, you just perfectly blended in with the environment, and I beat that deer in his world, in his
Yeah.
bedroom,
Yeah.
and was able to pull that off. And that was such a cool experience to be able to do that. Just to go into his turf basically, and have everything go perfectly right throughout that entire evening.
Well, how far was that deer when you shot him?
Like 24 yards.
Golly, man. What were you
Yeah.
feeling, man, whenever you were trying to get your bow back on that thing? I mean, did you pull back real early and just hold it or you
Uh-uh.
yeah,
Nope. I couldn't. Because it was so sensitive from the standpoint of being on the ground, late season pressured deer, icy conditions. Everything was loud. So if as soon as I drew or moved, I knew he was going to stop and look. There were, he'd be pinned right on me, and so I knew as soon as I drew, I have to. He has to be in a lane, and I have to be ready to shoot. Otherwise, because there was no in between. As soon as you move, there you're done. So I knew I had to move, and I knew that me drawing my bow back would be the thing that stops him
yeah,
for the shot. So it was like, wait till he's just doing, then draw, shoot right away before he, I knew I would get, a few seconds before he busts there. The other thing too is cold. We're sitting in a really uncomfortable position, kind of in a brush pile, like tucked between logs. Um, and the way I was sitting, I had to kind of lean back to kind of blend into the brush pile, and it kind of eliminated like using your core to draw back,
right.
and not to mention sitting there for hours in the
In the
cold and
cold.
ice. I did a practice draw early in the hunt, just to make sure everything was clear, and I struggled to get the bow back, the way I was sitting. And so I knew when he was coming in, I just told myself, just wait till the moment, and rip it back as far. There was going to be no like stealthily, quiet draw. It was rip it back and get the shot off as soon as you could. And
Yeah.
that's what I did. Like as soon as he hit that shooting lane, I had just a couple yard gap right there. But as soon as he hit that, I just ripped that thing back, and obviously he
Yeah.
whipped his head right at me, but he was already broadside in my shooting lane at that point. So yeah, lucky that it worked out, but it was it was thinking about all those things. Kind of goes back to those small details we were talking about.
Yep.
If I would have drawn back early when he was walking in, he would have stopped facing me at 40 yards. It's not a shot you're going to take. So again, just this every little detail matters on these hunts.
Yeah, man, you talking about that whole scenario is just like adrenaline overload.
Yeah,
From the
it
pulling the bow
was.
back all the way to hitting its mark and, knowing you got him. Golly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was wild. And it's one of those I'm so thankful to. have on video to
Yeah,
document and to look back on and relive really at
sure.
any time.
Yeah, yeah. You're the other one that and this will kind of lead us into another thing I wanted to talk to you about, but the other one was a few years ago whenever you picked up the traditional bow and you were hunting in that, I think it may have been a 10 point. I can't remember what it was, but that sucker looked like it was 3 yards from you in that ditch.
Yeah, yeah,
That was some beautiful footage too, man. Oh my goodness.
yeah.
Yeah, I
No,
was
thank
waiting on you to smack that joker, dude.
it should have happened, honestly.
Yeah,
That was the perfect example of the camera can beat you,
yeah,
when you're trying to, especially self film, when you're trying to self film at a somewhat high level quality, you're going to lose some because of that. And that was the example. Unfortunately, it's, looking back, it's like, gosh, that'd be my first recurve kill on a great deer, and sacrifice that to try to get everything filmed at a high level. And then your hindsight's always 2020 on that stuff. Like I had it probably enough room to just kind of let the camera. I knew he was coming and he was going to hit this gap. I probably could just let the camera sit on that gap and be ready to shoot as soon as he walked through.
right.
But that comes at the sacrifice of video quality, and I love the video quality. Like I love being able to film him walk right next to me. That added so much more to the experience rather than not see the deer, and then bam,
Yeah,
he's basically first time you see him is when the arrow's hitting him.
yeah,
Which, great, but it's not as cool as it could have been. And I
sure.
made that decision and it was so close to working out. What I think happened, I talked about growing up bow hunting and learning through a lot of failures, and I'm doing the same thing as I've entered my recurve and traditional hunting journey. And this one in particular, I think what beat me was I had my recurve hanging off an oak limb up above my head, where the grip of the bow was right where I needed to be. It didn't wasn't going to take a lot of movement, but recurve limbs don't sit as good on a bow hanger. They kind of get pinched in between,
Yep,
the string and the limb, and
yep.
what happened, it kind of got stuck, and so I had to kind of go like this. And as soon as I did that, that branch, which was full of oak leaves, that branch moved and rattled, and that's
Oh
kind of what.
man.
And so now then I'm stuck like this as the buck's looking up at me, with nothing to do. My other hand's still on the camera, so I can't just draw back and shoot him at that point.
Right.
So that's what beat me. But you learn, and so
Sure.
now I get in situations where I'll either keep like the bottom limb in my rubber boot, so it's just sitting there, and it just slowly slides out, or I bought um, something that basically wedges in between the string and that top limb, so that it'll hang better on a bow hook
Yeah,
and won't get pinched in there. So there's just little stuff again that just you learn and
sure.
you move on and you make sure it doesn't happen the next time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I got fascinated with the traditional archery hunting a few years back, and I've killed 4 bucks with a
That's
recurve,
awesome.
and I killed one um, with a bow I made. I was like, I killed my first deer in Kansas with a recurve. It was like a 143-inch 8 point. I mean, the first one, it was just ridiculous,
That's awesome.
and so I mean, I was hooked. And then so the next, and I'm a guy, I love a challenge. So like, I'm always like, I want a bigger challenge, bigger challenge. So the next year, I wanted to make my own bow. And so I made a bow, and then I went back to Kansas and I killed like a 135-inch 10 point with the bow I made. And then I killed here around my house, I killed that deer, that one over there,
Yeah.
2 years ago with a recurve. And then last year I killed an 8 point in Texas with a recurve. So I'm a fanatic about that stuff. So
Yeah.
what was it that drew you into the trying the traditional archery? I mean, where did that come from?
I think it just started with getting one in the first place, just because I was like, man, I think it'd be fun just to shoot in the backyard. I didn't think about hunting with it for a long time. I think I got the recurve I shoot now sitting right here. I think I got it in like 2015 or 2016, and I didn't start taking it to the woods for anything. I think turkey was the first thing in like 2020, 2021. So I had had it for almost 5 years without even thinking about hunting with it. Just mostly just enjoying shooting it, kind of learning what it's like to shoot one, how accurate can I get with it, where are my limitations, things like that. Because it's, as you know, it's such a different experience,
Hmm.
even just shooting. Everything is magnified. Like every little mistake in your form, or non-repeated thing in your form was going to cost you in consistent shooting. So yeah, just learning that. And I started on turkeys, and now I take it to the woods fairly often for deer. But I still haven't shot at a buck yet. And I've only flung one arrow at a deer, and it was a doe I killed last year.
Yeah,
So, I've put a lot of limitations on myself from a distance. I don't want, especially, I still consider myself green in the traditional archery game. Um, so I don't want to, wound animals, at this point in my journey of traditional archery. But two, I think the biggest thing is just it doesn't mix well with self-filming.
sure. Yeah,
I'm 100% convinced if I wasn't filming, I would hunt 100% with the recurve and not never think twice about it. I would just do it. But and trying to self film at a quality level with a recurve is, I'm not sure it gets any more difficult than that. It's
right,
it's beat me multiple times, and it's not just like getting the shot. It's like, instead of dealing with a deer at 30 to 40 yards of letting go of the camera and grabbing your bow and getting away with that movement, it's 15 yards. And that's a huge difference in terms of the movement you can get away with. And not to mention, like, you're usually hunting lower to the ground and or on the ground. All those types of things just make it really, really hard to have it work out, especially with filming. So I'm enjoying it, but I'm not stacking the odds in my favor to kill
yeah,
very many bucks with my recurve. But
yeah.
that's fine.
Well, I tried a couple years ago. I wanted to try to kill one here in Louisiana off the ground. And man, I got busted so many times. It's not
Yeah.
even funny. It is so hard to get one that close on the ground, you
Yep.
know, and be in the right setup, just to be camouflaged enough, hidden enough to where, and when they're that close, eye level, I mean, any little movement, man, it spooks
Yep.
them, you know.
And
Especially
and
here where I'm at, Louisiana, they walk around looking for a booger man around here.
yeah. And not to mention the residual effects of that. How much more quickly you burn out spots.
Yeah,
Maybe a compound high in the tree stand spot. Maybe you can get away with hunting it 4 or 5 times in a year. But on the ground, trying to get within 15 yards of a deer and you bust them, that might be your only chance.
right.
And your residual of where you're leaving your scent, and how much you're educating deer is so much higher than hunting with a compound at a further distance.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the self-filming part, you've mentioned that a few times, and of course that I mean I'm a self-filmer. That's all I do. And it is so hard, and a lot of times with the recurve hunts, it's just like you said earlier. I could have put the camera in front and let him walk into the frame and shoot it. And a lot of times that's what I resort to doing, because it's so hard, like you said, to do it the other way.
Hmm.
But if you had to, because I know you self film a lot, if you had to give maybe some, I don't know, some guidance or maybe some things that you've learned from the self filming side of things to help somebody be a better self filmer, what would you say those things would be? Because you do really well. You do really, really well with your self
Yeah.
filming footage. And I know you lose deer as a result of that. But,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah, no, thank you. And I would say very first thing someone has to do is make that decision. How high of a quality level do you want to shoot for?
hmm,
Because if they're like, man, I want to produce the best stuff possible, my first piece of advice would be, okay, You are now a videographer first and a hunter second.
Mhm.
And you have to think that way the whole time. Otherwise, your footage is going to suffer. If you
Yeah,
don't prioritize that camera over grabbing your bow, you're not going to ever, hit that quality level that you're striving for. Now, I say that just because, I get that answer a lot of guys. I want to produce like, really quality stuff. I don't think everyone should do that. I think I love people filming, but I think most people, I think 95% of people should just film for fun, to have memories to look back on, to share with family, friends, or whatever. And if that's your goal, you should not prioritize the camera over your bow. You should
right.
just, whatever it captures, it captures. Maybe it's zoomed way out. It's just enough to kind of recreate that experience years down the road when you want to go relive it and look back on it.
Sure.
I still fully think that's worth taking a camera to the woods for. But that would be my first piece of advice is make that decision, what quality level, and then go from there. And once you start prioritizing the camera over everything else, it everything else, you become a really good self filmer naturally, just because that's what you're focused on. And then beyond that, I guess to get a little bit more specific with advice is try to avoid the things that lead to frustration and burnout. And to me, it's two things. One, taking too much gear and not the right packable lightweight gear. It's one thing if you have a cameraman carrying all this stuff, but when you're trying to carry it, it's a pain when you have a big bulky camera arm or a big bulky camera and lens. Like try to figure out what a really streamlined mobile packable hunting setup, filming setup is, and go with that. So the more minimal you can be, the better, because you're not going to get as frustrated. And that includes like easy to set up stuff.
Right.
Just be efficient with how you set it up. Um, so that's a big one that leads to burnout. And I would say that the second one would be just practicing with your setup too. Maybe it's velvet filming. You're not going out to actually shoot a deer, but you're still going through the motions of packing your gear, unpacking it. When you get in the tree, setting it up, just make all that entire process second nature. And then that way it's just part of your hunting. Like I don't even think about. I'd rather forget my bow than my camera um, at this point.
Yeah.
It's just to me, it's part of hunting anymore, and you kind of just got to make it that, and not get too frustrated by all the gear you have to carry and all the time you have to spend setting it up.
Sure. I always like to say, because I've tried to get some guys to like hunt, with me on like my YouTube channel and stuff, like, team members kind of a deal. And a lot
Yeah,
of times guys struggle to get any kill shot on a video. And I'm like, well, the problem there is that you're hunting with the camera, not for the camera.
yeah,
And that's the
yeah,
difference.
yeah,
What you're saying is decide whether you're going to just hunt with the camera and have a good time, or are you
right,
hunting for the camera to make sure you get the kill shot or make sure you get the most important parts.
yeah.
Oh,
I think that's a good way to put it.
yeah, yeah,
And going along with being efficient with your setup is also just um, learning where things should be in the tree for easy access. Making sure the camera ends up at the right height and you can still shoot around it. It's not in your way of drawing your bow. All those things. Like it's again, you learn through failure
yeah,
over the
yeah,
years.
yeah,
Sometimes they're hard lessons, but that's another thing that becomes burnout too, because if you're not efficient in your setup, like you're gonna make more mistakes, and a lot of guys just quit. They're like, man, I just can't do this filming thing. I'm
sure.
done, and that's a comment I get so much because guys watch me. We all struggle with we're trying to film non-cooperating actors and the deer that we're chasing, and so a lot of times they're gonna put you in a pretzel, go on the wrong side of the tree, do this, do something unexpected, and so a lot of people get to watch me go through that in the hunt. Like the deer I killed this past season, I had him in basically in bow range for almost an hour before I was able to get a shot. multiple times I could have killed him if I wasn't worried about filming, but the camera would be on one side of the tree, I'd be
Right.
on the other, just kind of nonstop um, stuff, and it's just part of the game.
So it
there's
makes
there's
it
always
fun,
going to
man.
be things that happen, yeah, and it's just part of it, and you just got to kind of know that going into it.
Yeah. Well, I had to make a big adjustment in the last couple of years with my setup for self filming. I'm 51 and my eyes have fallen apart, so I've had to raise my camera up a little bit so I could see
Yeah,
the
yeah,
screen better.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, kind of
Yeah,
sad,
little
but it's
stuff like
true.
that, or
Yeah.
getting, external monitors, or
Yeah.
all that stuff. There's
Yeah.
options.
That's right. That's right. Well, one more thing I wanted to touch base with you here is your land development, land management. I know over the years you've bought a few farms. Again, I've done that a couple of times myself and really enjoyed doing that. My struggle is finding the right farm that's near me and not,
Hmm.
I've purchased a few farms that were a couple hours away and it just made it so hard to manage. And so I just sold my last one last year, and I'm just kind of waiting on the right one to come along that's a little bit closer. But what is it that you like so much about the land management, like purchasing your own farm and doing all that work on it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the land ownership side is, most everybody's dream. It was always my dream. I never thought in a million years I'd ever, have my own land. And so I don't take that for granted at all. It's such a special thing to get out on a piece of property as you've experienced. And man, this is mine. This I can do what I want with this. This is something that I can call my own. Um, is a is an indescribable experience, really. But the process of land management is something I've fallen in love with, and it's probably something I enjoy more than the kill anymore. Um, just trying different things land management wise, but just making your property more beneficial to wildlife and watching them respond to it is such a rewarding experience. Um, because it involves a lot of sweat equity. It involves a ton of hard work, resources, money, whatever it may be. And so, especially during this off-season time frame, it's just every time I'm out the farm, I'm grinding, whether it's working on TSI like I'm doing this time of year, or food plots, coming up, or other habitat plannings, or whatever it is. It's you're grinding constantly, and then you get to spend the entire fall watching it pay off. Not in the form of a kill, but watching things like more deer use your property. Them spend the deer that do use it spend more time on it. They just they look like it's kind of like you built this home, like this optimal home for them, by providing as much as you can. It's just, again, if you haven't done it, it's hard to explain. But just knowing that your hard work is paying off with some really enjoyable times in the tree stand is probably what I love the most about land management.
Sure. Do you now just try to help me understand? I know you had like I know you and Mike had a farm together.
Mhm.
But then you went and got another farm of your own, I think, and then now you're maybe on your second farm. Like, what's the difference between like size wise and the difference between those two farms, and what do you look for in buying a farm? And I know you're in Iowa, so it may be different than what I would be looking for right here in Louisiana, but tell me about that.
Yeah, so I still only own just one farm. The first farm
Okay.
I owned, I was a 50% owner, and I sold my half to be able to buy a different farm that came up for sale. And that was I own that one 100% on my own. And then the farm I currently own came up for sale, and I had to sell that one. I'd owned that one for three and a half years. So I sold that one to buy my current farm. And so it's just kind of a natural progression there. But it's fun taking, especially something. My favorite type of farm is something that's relatively raw. I don't think I'd ever find myself buying a quote unquote turnkey farm because it takes a lot of fun out of it for me.
Yeah.
I want to see some potential. The potential has to be there, obviously. I have to be able to look at it and be like, okay, I could see this being a really good whitetail farm. Um, but I don't want the work to have already been done. Like I love having a blank slate to work on, and I've been fortunate to have that with these two farms that I've owned. So it's tough because I'm in a similar position as what you mentioned with regards to finding the right farm that's close because you want to spend a lot of time there. The
Right.
further away it is, the harder it is because it's
Yep.
time away from family and events and all that other stuff. And unfortunately, that is really the only negative I have right now with my current farm is it's a good drive. So it makes it tough to get over there as much as I want to. But it's doable for now. It was too good of a farm. At least it appealed to me enough that I was like, I can make this work. It's going to be a lot more windshield time, a lot more, commitment to get over there, but I think it's going to be worth it, and it's paid off a lot already just within my first year of ownership. So yeah, as far as like things to look for, man, every farm's a little bit different, and you kind of have to make sure you don't overlook some of the things that could make a sleeper farm. A lot of guys tend to overlook properties that don't have a ton of cover, or maybe aren't in a neighborhood with a bunch of cover. Um, People focus so much on the neighbors, and I think there's advantages to both sides. And first of all, the inventory is not large enough that you can be super picky on which farm you want to buy. Sometimes just you got to jump on something that comes on the market, because you're never gonna. It's gonna be really hard to find the perfect farm, just because they just don't last long. They just don't sit on the market and they don't come up for sale very often.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, just kind of looking and evaluating like, where some of the trade-offs, and there's advantages to, a lot of guys talk about how important the neighborhood is, and it's absolutely correct. Your farm is really only as good as your neighbors unless you're buying a giant farm. But for most of us, that aren't owning 1,000 acres or something, your farm's really only as good as your neighbors. However, people do tend to get caught up in trying to find the perfect neighborhood where everyone else is also doing management. It's great. It helps everyone benefits from that. However, it also creates a lot more competition.
Yeah.
Um, Put me, I'll take being in a neighborhood with a bunch of farmers that don't hunt every day of the week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I know I'm going to be able to draw more deer and have them spend more time on my property, as opposed to being in this perfect co-op neighborhood where everyone's doing that and the deer are spending equal amount of time off your property as they are on your property. Granted, if everyone's passing deer and getting them to age, like it does create more opportunities, and I get that, and I've experienced that, and there's something to be said there, but that's not the only way to do it either.
Yeah.
There's other opportunities you can look at a piece of ground and know that you're going to have the advantage.
Yeah. Let me give you a scenario. I was talking to I was doing a podcast with Don Higgins,
Yeah,
and Don, his farm is pretty much isolated to itself. It's
yep,
surrounded by fields. He's like, I don't
right.
I don't have any neighbors that are, have woods and things like that for a couple of miles. And he speaks of preferring, he said a lot of people stay away from farms that are isolated like that because they're afraid there's no backup cover, there's no backup, no neighbors, things like
Hmm.
that would hold more deer, and so you'll have more opportunities like you said, which you do in some
Hmm.
ways. But he said
Hmm.
if you give me an isolated farm, he said I'm packing it with food and they're going to stay on my place and I'm going to have
Hmm.
great hunting. And so then I asked him, I said, because I mean, obviously, you look at his farm and see what he killed. I mean, the guy's not wrong. I mean, his proof's in
Hmm.
the pudding. So I said, well, okay, Don. I said, well, obviously, I can't buy. I just can't. I can't buy a large farm. So I was thinking, what is the smallest? This is what I asked him. What is the smallest acreage that you think I could do what you're talking about with? and have a decent little place for me to hunt personally. And he said 40 acres. He said if you had 40 acres that you would do manage right, keep a lot of food on it, have you good cover and food, you can make that into a good property, even if it's isolated away from everything else. Obviously, it's better to have more, but if you had at least 40, you could do okay, he said.
Yeah. As you were talking, 40 is a number that popped in my head as well as because I kind of figured that's where you were going with it. But with that being said, there's so many factors. Like a 40-acre piece also highlights the importance of access. If you don't have good, unobtrusive access to that farm, you'll blow every deer out of that 40 acres pretty quick.
Hmm.
Even if they don't have cover to run to next door, they're gonna keep running until they find cover.
That's right. Yeah.
40 acres isn't very big when it comes to pressure.
Yeah.
So bigger is better from that standpoint, but 40 is certainly doable. You
Yeah.
set it up right, and if you can get in and out without alerting every deer there, it's very doable with 40 acres. And I think the trade-off is just what we talked about though. Like you have that isolated property, um, there you're going to draw less deer. You don't have as big of a pool to pull from in terms of neighborhood cover.
Right.
But if a deer's there, you're going to kill it. Like
Yeah.
it's almost a 0% chance that deer's getting away from you on that isolated property.
Right.
Because once he's there, that's the key is just make him be there because
Yeah.
then he ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
He,
And I
he's
think
he's
that's where he's
stuck
talking
in
about the
there.
food, make sure the food is there. And,
Yeah.
and, he talked about how he has a sanctuary uh, part on his property where he doesn't go in there, he doesn't hunt in there, but he makes sure that he keeps tons of food for deer. He said, I
Oh yeah.
on my farm, I plant food for deer. That's
Yep.
it. And,
Yep. For sure. For
and he's
sure.
killed a bunch of 200 inchers. So,
Yeah.
I tend to believe what he's saying on that deal.
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's a good strategy. It's paid off for him.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. He definitely knows a lot. Well, last thing before we go, tell me a little bit about your business ventures. I see you got the day walk hat on right there. I know you have a scent line, so tell me a little bit about what you got going on there before we head out.
Yeah. Daywalk is just one of many projects I have going on. I need to I need to get better about saying no to certain things just to focus more. But Daywalk's just been kind of a fun little side business for me. I've always been, obsessed with mock scrapes. I think I still think they're the best inventory tool there is in terms of, getting to know bucks in terms of the personality, where they like to spend time, when they come and go, all that type of stuff. Um, I think there's so much we can learn as hunters, especially bow hunters, from mock scrape, and so being a kind of power user of that and creating mock scrapes, I thought it'd be fun to have my own scent line. And so I started trying different things and found some stuff that I absolutely loved. Had better results than any other scent I've ever used, and was able to make it into my own brand. So it's been really fun. This will be the going into the third year. It's been fun seeing and hearing from everyone else's experiences that have got to use it. A lot of people have went on and ordered and just, it's cool to see all the trail cam pictures and success stories and stuff like that. And cool to see people are having the same experience that I had when I first started using it a few years ago. So yeah, daywalkdeer.com is where I have, and I'm having, it's not out yet, but I'm making some pretty big additions to that line this year. Then some supplemental categories. So I'm hoping, by early summer I'll have some of that launch, which I'm really excited about. So just kind of getting everything ready on the back end now for that. But yeah, I'm involved in that business. Have my own food plot seed line that's launching here in the next few weeks. So anybody that wants help on the food plot seed side, I love helping food plotters in general, but especially new guys or inexperienced guys because it's an overwhelming task of trying to figure out what to plant, when to plant, how to plant. Working through very little issues and stuff like that. So happy to help anybody that has interest there. But yeah, I mean, just YouTube, I guess, is where a lot of people can follow along with certain projects, and people are always welcome to reach out to me directly.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, man. I don't know if you influence Caleb Griner and all of that or not, but that dude loves them
Yeah.
mock scrapes as well.
I don't take credit for that, but I know he is. We've been together and created some mock scrapes together over the years, and talked about different things that have worked for us, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean Caleb, he's a good dude. He knows his stuff.
Yeah, he's a vine scrape guy. Yeah.
He is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 I told him last year I had him on a podcast and we talked a lot about that Vendetta buck that he killed on the ground. And I told him, I said, there's two hunts that really stick out in my mind for Midwest whitetail that I don't think I'll ever forget. And I said, one of them was that deer that you killed in the snow and in
Yeah.
the log pile. And then I said, and then yours killing Vendetta. That was just, those two hunts were just crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yep.
sure. And
Yep.
and similar, somewhat similar fashion too.
Yeah, yep, yep, yep. Well, Jared, man, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, dude. I have absolutely enjoyed the conversation, man. It's been good for real. And
Same here, man. No, I,
yeah,
I appreciate you reaching out. It was good to catch up here, and
yeah,
happy to do it anytime.
yeah. And I'll be following along. So I'm waiting on the day. I'm waiting on the day when you smoke a big buck with that recurve, man.
Man, hopefully this year.
That's right. That's right. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it, and I'll let you go about your day, my brother. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Take care.
You bet. You bet.